Marcus Johnson stood in the middle of the shopping mall, his hand pressed against his chest. The pain had started small, like a tiny pinch. Now it felt like someone was squeezing his heart with both hands. Sweat dripped down his face even though the mall was cool and comfortable. His wife Sarah noticed immediately. She had been married to Marcus for 20 years. She knew every expression on his face. The look he had now scared her more than anything she had ever seen. "Marcus, what's wrong?" Sarah dropped her shopping bags and grabbed his arm. Marcus tried to smile. He didn't want to worry her. "I'm okay. Just a little pain in my chest. Maybe I ate something bad." But Sarah knew better. Her father had died from a heart attack when she was young. She recognized the signs. Marcus was breathing hard. His skin looked gray. His eyes showed fear even though he tried to hide it. "We're going to the hospital right now," Sarah said firmly. Marcus wanted to argue. He was a high school teacher. He taught history to teenagers every day. He was only 45 years old. He played basketball on weekends. Healthy people didn't have heart attacks. But the pain was getting worse. It spread from his chest to his left arm. His jaw started to hurt too. "Okay," Marcus whispered. He could barely speak. Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She dialed 911. The operator answered on the first ring. 911, what's your emergency? My husband is having chest pain. Bad chest pain. We're at Riverside Mall. Please send help fast. Sarah's voice broke as she spoke. Help is on the way. Stay with him. Is he breathing? Sarah looked at Marcus. He was bent over, holding his chest. But he was breathing. Yes, he's breathing. But he looks really bad. Please hurry. The ambulance will be there in 5 minutes. Can you get him to sit down? Sarah helped Marcus to a bench near a store window. People walked past them, busy with their shopping. A few stopped to stare. Nobody offered to help. Sarah wanted to scream at them, but she focused on Marcus instead. Marcus sat down heavily. The world was spinning. The bright mall lights hurt his eyes. The sound of music from the stores seemed too loud. All he could think about was the pain. It felt like an elephant was sitting on his chest. Just breathe, baby. Help is coming. Sarah held his hand tight. She had never felt so scared in her life. The 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Finally, Sarah heard sirens. 2 paramedics rushed into the mall with a stretcher and medical bags. They wore blue uniforms and moved fast. I'm Jake, this is Maria, we're here to help you, sir. Can you tell me your name? The male paramedic knelt beside Marcus. Marcus Johnson. Every word hurt to say. Okay, Marcus. We're going to take care of you. Can you describe the pain? Heavy, crushing, can't breathe right. Marcus gasped between words. Maria, the female paramedic, was already checking his vital signs. She wrapped a blood pressure cuff around his arm. She placed an oxygen mask over his face. She stuck small patches on his chest and connected them to a portable heart monitor. Blood pressure is high. Heart rate is irregular. Maria spoke quickly to Jake. They had done this many times before. They worked together like a machine. We need to get him to the hospital now, Jake said. He looked at Sarah. Ma'am, which hospital do you want? Riverside Medical Center is closest. Riverside Medical Center was one of the best hospitals in Richmond, Virginia. It had a great reputation. Sarah had read articles about their heart doctors. Rich people went there for treatment. Yes, Riverside, please. Sarah climbed into the ambulance with Marcus. The paramedics lifted Marcus onto the stretcher. They moved him into the ambulance. Jake jumped in the back with Sarah and Marcus. Maria got in the driver's seat and turned on the sirens. The ambulance raced through the streets. Cars moved out of the way. Red lights meant nothing. Every second mattered. Jake started an IV in Marcus's arm. He gave him aspirin to chew. He checked the heart monitor constantly. The lines on the screen jumped up and down in patterns that worried him. How long have you had the pain? Jake asked. Started maybe 30 minutes ago. Got bad fast. Marcus spoke through the oxygen mask. Any history of heart problems? High blood pressure? Diabetes? No, nothing. I'm healthy. Marcus couldn't believe this was happening to him. Sarah sat in the corner of the ambulance. She watched everything. She prayed silently. Please let him be okay. Please let the doctors save him. Please don't take him from me. The ambulance pulled up to the emergency room entrance at Riverside Medical Center. The hospital was huge and modern. It had 7 floors of glass and steel. The emergency room doors opened automatically as the paramedics wheeled Marcus inside. A team of nurses and doctors waited inside. They wore scrubs in different colors. Blue, green, pink. Everyone moved with purpose. 45-year-old male, chest pain for 30 minutes, irregular heartbeat, elevated blood pressure. Jake reported quickly. The medical team took over immediately. They moved Marcus to a bed in the emergency room. The room was white and bright. Machines beeped. Monitors showed numbers and lines. A doctor listened to Marcus's heart with a stethoscope. "I'm Dr. Reynolds. We're going to run some tests, Marcus. We need to figure out what's going on with your heart." The young doctor spoke kindly. He seemed competent and caring. Nurses drew blood from Marcus's arm. They did an EKG test, placing more patches on his chest. They took his temperature. They asked him questions about his medical history. Everything happened fast. Sarah stood against the wall. She felt helpless. All she could do was watch as strangers worked on her husband. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. A nurse noticed Sarah. "Ma'am, you can sit right here next to him. We're taking good care of him." Sarah sat in a chair next to Marcus's bed. She held his hand. His skin felt cold and clammy. Marcus looked at his wife. Even through the pain, he could see how scared she was. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." "You're going to be fine. These doctors will fix you up." Sarah tried to sound confident, but her voice shook. Dr. Reynolds looked at the EKG results. His face became serious. He looked at the blood test results on a computer screen. He listened to Marcus's heart again with his stethoscope. "Marcus, your tests show some concerning results. Your heart is under a lot of stress. We need to do more tests and possibly some treatment. I'm going to consult with the senior doctor on duty." Dr. Reynolds patted Marcus's shoulder gently. Sarah felt a little bit of relief. They were taking this seriously. They would figure out what was wrong. Marcus would get the treatment he needed. Everything would be okay. But then Dr. Reynolds left the room. And a few minutes later, a different doctor walked in. This doctor was older, maybe in his 60s. He had gray hair and cold blue eyes. He wore an expensive watch and walked like he owned the hospital. The nurse called him Dr. Pemberton. He was the senior attending physician. He would be taking over Marcus's case now. Sarah didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The nightmare was just beginning. Dr. Pemberton glanced at Marcus. Then he looked at the chart. Then he looked at Marcus again. His expression was hard to read. It wasn't kind like Dr. Reynolds. It wasn't warm. It was something else. Something that made Sarah's stomach feel sick. Marcus closed his eyes. The pain was still there. The pressure on his chest hadn't stopped. He needed help. He needed it now. He trusted that this senior doctor would save his life. He had no idea what was about to happen. Dr. Richard Pemberton picked up Marcus's chart without looking at him directly. He flipped through the pages slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Marcus was still struggling to breathe. The oxygen mask fogged up with each breath. "So, Mr. Johnson, you're having chest pain?" Dr. Pemberton's voice was flat. He didn't sound concerned. "Yes, doctor. It's really bad. It hurts so much." Marcus's voice was weak. Dr. Pemberton glanced at the heart monitor. He looked at the numbers on the screen. Then he looked at Marcus's face. His expression didn't change. Chest pain can mean many things. Often it's just indigestion or anxiety. People come to the emergency room all the time thinking they're having a heart attack when they just ate too much pizza. Dr. Pemberton put the chart down. Sarah stood up from her chair. Something felt wrong. But Dr. Reynolds said his tests showed concerning results. He said Marcus's heart is under stress. Dr. Pemberton turned to look at Sarah for the first time. His eyes were cold. "Dr. Reynolds is a resident. He's still learning. I've been doing this for 35 years. I think I know what I'm looking at." The way he said it made Sarah feel small. But she wouldn't back down, not when it came to her husband's life. "Can you explain the test results to us?" Sarah asked. Dr. Pemberton sighed like she was bothering him. "The EKG shows some irregularities, but that could be from stress or anxiety. His blood pressure is elevated, but that's common in the emergency room." People get nervous. Marcus tried to sit up. The pain shot through his chest again. He gasped and fell back on the pillow. "Doctor, I'm not nervous. Something is really wrong. The pain is getting worse." Marcus could barely speak. Each word took effort. "Mr. Johnson, I need you to calm down. Getting upset will only make things worse." Dr. Pemberton checked his expensive watch. He seemed more interested in the time than in Marcus. A nurse named Kim Park stood in the corner of the room. She had been watching everything. She had worked at Riverside Medical Center for 10 years. She had seen Dr. Pemberton treat patients before. She knew his reputation. Some of the other nurses had complained about him, but he was powerful. Nobody wanted to challenge him. Kim looked at Marcus's monitor. She saw the irregular heartbeat. She saw the high blood pressure. She had seen heart attacks before. This looked serious. This wasn't just anxiety or indigestion. Dr. Pemberton, should we consider running a troponin test, or maybe a cardiac catheterization? Kim spoke quietly, trying not to sound like she was questioning him. Dr. Pemberton turned to her sharply. Nurse Park, I don't remember asking for your medical opinion. If I need a nurse to tell me how to do my job, I'll let you know. Kim's face turned red. She looked down at the floor. She wanted to say more, but she knew what would happen if she pushed too hard. Dr. Pemberton had gotten nurses fired before for insubordination. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. She didn't care about this doctor's ego. She cared about her husband. Doctor, with all respect, my husband is in serious pain. He's never had anything like this before. He's a healthy man. He plays basketball. He eats right. This isn't normal for him. Dr. Pemberton crossed his arms. Mrs. Johnson, I understand you're worried, but I see dozens of patients every day who think they're dying. Most of them are fine. Your husband's symptoms are not consistent with a major cardiac event. But Dr. Reynolds said, Dr. Reynolds is wrong. Dr. Pemberton cut her off. Look, I don't mean to be harsh, but we get a lot of people coming through these doors looking for pain medication. They claim they're having emergencies. They want us to give them drugs. Sarah's mouth fell open. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Are you saying my husband is faking this? Are you saying he's trying to get drugs? I'm saying that certain people know how to work the system. Dr. Pemberton looked directly at Marcus when he said this. The words hung in the air like poison. Sarah understood exactly what he meant. Certain people. He meant black people. He meant people who looked like Marcus. Like her. Marcus heard it too, even through the pain. He had experienced racism before. He was a black man in America. He knew the looks. He knew the comments. He knew the assumptions people made. But he never thought he would face it here. Not in a hospital. Not when he was fighting for his life. That's not what this is, Marcus said weakly. I don't want drugs. I want help. I'm scared, please. Dr. Pemberton wrote something on the chart. I'm ordering some basic pain medication and fluids through the IV. You need to rest and calm down. If you're still having symptoms in a few hours, we can reassess. A few hours? Sarah couldn't believe it. He could die in a few hours. Mrs. Johnson, you're being dramatic. Your husband is not going to die. He's going to be fine. Dr. Pemberton's voice was hard now. He was done being polite. Kim Park watched this exchange with growing horror. She had seen Dr. Pemberton dismiss patients before, but this was different. Marcus's symptoms were serious. The test results were concerning. This man needed immediate cardiac care, but Dr. Pemberton wasn't providing it. She thought about Dr. Reynolds. He had seen the same test results and wanted to do more. Why was Dr. Pemberton seeing something different? Or was he choosing to see something different? The paramedics reported that his pain started suddenly and spread to his left arm and jaw. Those are classic heart attack symptoms, Kim said carefully. Dr. Pemberton spun around to face her. Nurse Park, if you question my medical judgment one more time, I will have you removed from this floor. Do you understand me? Kim nodded. She felt tears forming in her eyes. She felt powerless. She was just a nurse. He was a senior doctor. Nobody would believe her over him. Sarah grabbed Dr. Pemberton's arm. Please just do more tests. Please make sure he's okay. He's my husband. He's the father of our children, please. Dr. Pemberton pulled his arm away. Mrs. Johnson, I've made my decision. Your husband will receive basic supportive care. If there's no improvement, we'll consider next steps. But I'm not going to order expensive tests and procedures for what appears to be a simple case of anxiety or indigestion. He walked toward the door. Sarah blocked his path. You're not leaving. You're not walking away from my husband when he needs help. Mrs. Johnson, I suggest you calm down. You're causing a scene. Dr. Pemberton's voice was ice cold. I don't care about causing a scene. I care about my husband getting proper treatment. Sarah's voice got louder. Other people in the emergency room could hear her now. Dr. Pemberton pressed a button on the wall. It was the security button. Within seconds, 2 security guards appeared at the door. These people are being disruptive. They're interfering with patient care. I need you to escort Mrs. Johnson out of this room, Dr. Pemberton said calmly. No, you can't do this, Sarah screamed. He's dying. Can't you see he's dying? The security guards looked uncomfortable. They didn't want to remove a scared wife from her sick husband's room. But Dr. Pemberton was a senior doctor. They had to follow his orders. Ma'am, you need to come with us, one guard said gently. I'm not leaving him. I'm not leaving my husband. Sarah grabbed onto Marcus's bed rail. Marcus tried to reach for her, but the pain was too intense. He watched helplessly as the guards tried to pull Sarah away. Kim Park couldn't take it anymore. She stepped forward. Dr. Pemberton, this isn't right. His condition is deteriorating. Look at the monitor. His heart rate is getting more irregular. Everyone looked at the heart monitor. Kim was right. The lines on the screen were jumping wildly. Marcus's heart was struggling. That's just because everyone is yelling and causing stress, Dr. Pemberton said dismissively. Once we have some peace and quiet, his vitals will stabilize. But Kim saw something else on the monitor, something that made her blood run cold. Marcus was going into cardiac distress. This wasn't anxiety. This was a real emergency. She made a decision in that moment. She would document everything. She would take photos of the test results with her phone. She would record the times in Dr. Pemberton's decisions. If something happened to Marcus Johnson, there would be evidence. Someone would know the truth. A young doctor appeared at the door. It was Dr. James Chen, another resident who worked the emergency room. He had heard the commotion and came to see what was happening. Dr. Chen looked at Marcus. He looked at the monitors. His eyes went wide. He had just finished his cardiology rotation. He knew what he was seeing. Dr. Pemberton, I think we need to call cardiology immediately. His ST segments are elevated. That indicates myocardial infarction. Dr. Chen spoke quickly, using the medical term for heart attack. Dr. Pemberton glared at him. Dr. Chen, you're out of line. This is my patient. I'm the attending physician. You have no authority here. But sir, if we don't act now, if you don't leave this room right now, I'll make sure you never finish your residency at this hospital. Do I make myself clear? But a man's life was at stake. Before Dr. Chen could decide what to do, something changed. People at the emergency room entrance started moving quickly. Someone important had just arrived. Someone unexpected. The energy in the whole department shifted. Dr. Pemberton didn't notice yet. He was too focused on getting Sarah removed from the room and putting the younger doctors in their place. But Kim Park noticed. She saw the hospital administrator rushing through the emergency R. The security guards still had their hands on Sarah's arms, trying to gently pull her away from Marcus's bedside. She held onto the bed rail with all her strength. Her knuckles were white. Tears streamed down her face. Please don't make me leave him, please, he needs me. Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. Marcus watched through half-closed eyes. The pain in his chest had become a constant crushing pressure. He felt weak. He felt like he was floating away from his own body. He wanted to tell Sarah it was okay. He wanted to tell her to stop fighting. But he couldn't find the words. He couldn't find the energy. Dr. Pemberton stood with his arms crossed, watching the scene with annoyance on his face. Mrs. Johnson, you're making this harder than it needs to be. If you don't leave voluntarily, these officers will have to remove you by force. Then remove me by force, because I'm not leaving my husband when he's dying. Sarah's voice was loud and clear. Other patients in nearby rooms could hear everything. Nurse Kim Park stood frozen near the medical equipment. Her hands were shaking. She had pulled out her phone and was secretly taking pictures of Marcus's monitor. She captured the irregular heartbeat patterns. She captured the timestamps. She photographed the test results that were still up on the computer screen. She knew she could get fired for this. Using personal phones on the hospital floor was against policy. But something deeper told her this evidence might be important. Something told her that Marcus Johnson's story wasn't over yet. Dr. James Chen remained in the doorway. His mind was racing. He was only 28 years old. He had worked so hard to become a doctor. He had sacrificed everything. His social life, his sleep, his savings, all to help people. But what good was being a doctor if he couldn't actually help people when they needed it most? He looked at Marcus again. The man's skin was gray. His breathing was shallow. His lips had a slight blue tint. These were not signs of anxiety or indigestion. These were signs of a heart in crisis. Dr. Chen made his decision. He didn't care about the consequences anymore. Dr. Pemberton, I'm formally requesting a second opinion. I believe Mr. Johnson is experiencing an acute cardiac event. Hospital policy states that any physician can request consultation in cases of disagreement about patient care. Dr. Chen's voice was steady, but his heart was pounding. Dr. Pemberton's face turned red. You little fool. You have no idea what you're doing. I could end your career with one phone call, then make the call, but I'm not going to stand here and watch a man die because of inadequate care. Dr. Chen moved closer to Marcus's bed. The two security guards looked at each other. This situation was getting complicated. They weren't medical professionals. They didn't know who was right. But they knew something felt very wrong about all of this. Dr. Pemberton, maybe we should let the lady stay while you sort this out with the other doctor. One guard suggested carefully. I gave you an order. Follow it. Dr. Pemberton's voice was sharp as a knife. Sarah suddenly stopped struggling. She had heard voices in the hallway, voices that didn't belong to hospital staff. She heard someone saying Governor Williams. She heard the word press. Her eyes went wide. Governor Patricia Williams was the governor of Virginia. Sarah had voted for her. She had seen her on TV many times. The governor was a black woman who had fought for healthcare reform. She had promised to make hospitals more accountable. Could the governor really be here? In this hospital? Right now? Kim Park had heard the same voices. She quickly moved to the doorway and peeked out. Her breath caught in her throat. It was true. Governor Williams was walking through the emergency department with her security team. There were people with cameras. There was the hospital administrator, David Chang, looking like he was about to have a panic attack. Kim turned back to the room. She caught Dr. Chen's eye and nodded toward the hallway. He looked and saw what she saw. His expression changed from worry to hope. Sarah saw the exchange between the nurse and young doctor. She understood something big was happening. She found her voice again. Governor Williams is here. The governor is in this hospital. Sarah shouted as loud as she could. Dr. Pemberton froze. For the first time since entering the room, he looked uncertain. What are you talking about? The governor is doing a hospital inspection. She's right outside in the emergency department, and she's about to see what kind of care this hospital provides to its patients. Sarah's voice was strong now. She had hope. Dr. Pemberton moved quickly to the door. He looked out into the hallway. His face went pale. It was true. Governor Patricia Williams was there, walking through the emergency room speaking to patients and staff. The cameras were following her. This was not good. This was very not good. Governor Williams had made surprise hospital visits before. She called them reality checks. She wanted to see how hospitals really operated, not the clean, prepared version they showed during scheduled tours. She had shut down one hospital last year for safety violations. She had fired administrators for covering up problems, and now she was here, at Riverside Medical Center, while Dr. Pemberton was in the middle of discharging a patient with a possible heart attack, while security was trying to remove that patient's wife from the room. Everyone calmed down. Just calm down. Dr. Pemberton tried to take control again. Mrs. Johnson, you can stay. Security, you can leave. The guards looked relieved. They quickly left the room. Sarah went back to Marcus's side. She grabbed his hand. Hold on, baby. Help is coming. Real help is coming. Marcus squeezed her hand weakly. He was barely conscious now. The pain had become everything. He couldn't think. He couldn't focus. He just held on to Sarah's hand like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Dr. Chen saw Marcus's deteriorating condition. Dr. Pemberton, we need to act now. His blood pressure is dropping. His oxygen saturation is falling. He needs immediate intervention. Dr. Pemberton looked at Marcus. Then he looked at the door. He could hear the governor's voice getting closer. She was talking to patients in the rooms nearby. She was asking them about their care. She was looking at medical charts. He had to make a choice. He could admit he was wrong and order proper treatment. Or he could stick to his diagnosis and hope the governor didn't come into this room. His pride won. It always won. The patient is stable. He's receiving appropriate care. There's no emergency here. Dr. Pemberton spoke firmly, trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. Kim Park couldn't stay quiet anymore. She had been a nurse for too long. She had taken an oath to protect patients. She couldn't let Marcus Johnson die because of one doctor's ego and prejudice. Dr. Pemberton, I'm documenting in the patient's chart that I disagree with your assessment. I believe this patient needs immediate cardiac intervention. I'm noting the time and your refusal to escalate care. Kim's hands were shaking as she typed on the computer. Dr. Pemberton spun around. You're fired. Effective immediately. Pack your things and leave. Fine, fire me, but I'm not leaving until I know Mr. Johnson is safe. Kim stood her ground. Dr. Chen stepped next to Kim. You can fire me too, because I agree with Nurse Park. This man needs help now. The voices in the hallway were getting louder. Governor Williams was close now. Very close, Sarah made a decision. She had been quiet and polite her whole life. She had taught her children to respect authority. She had always followed the rules. But not today. Not when her husband's life was on the line. She walked to the door of the room. She opened it wide, and she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Help! We need help. The doctor won't treat my husband. He's dying! Please, someone help us." Everyone in the emergency department turned to look. Nurses stopped what they were doing. Patients sat up in their beds. Security guards moved toward the sound. The cameramen pointed their cameras in that direction, and Governor Patricia Williams heard the scream. She immediately changed direction and started walking quickly toward Marcus's room. Her security team followed. The cameras followed. The hospital administrator followed, looking like he wanted to disappear. Dr. Pemberton's face went white. This was it. His worst nightmare was coming true. Sarah stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Please, Governor Williams. Please help my husband. The doctor says he's fine, but he's not fine. He's dying and they won't help him, please. Governor Williams reached the door. She was a tall, impressive woman in her 50s. She wore a navy blue suit and pearl earrings. Her expression was serious and focused. She looked at Sarah, then she looked past her into the room. She saw Marcus on the bed, gray and struggling to breathe. She saw the monitors showing irregular heartbeats. She saw Dr. Pemberton standing there with a guilty look on his face. She saw the young doctor and nurse standing together, looking scared but determined. She saw the security guards lingering in the hallway. Someone want to tell me what's going on here? The governor's voice was calm but carried authority that filled the entire room. Dr. Pemberton straightened his white coat. He put on his professional face. Governor Williams, what a surprise. This is just a routine case. The patient came in with chest pain. We're monitoring him and providing appropriate care. Governor Williams walked into the room. She looked at Marcus's monitors. She wasn't a doctor, but she'd visited enough hospitals to know what. Dr. Pemberton stood frozen in place. The color had drained from his face completely. He looked at Governor Williams. He looked at the cameras pointed at him. He looked at Marcus Johnson lying on the hospital bed, barely conscious. For 35 years, he had been untouchable. He was a senior physician. He had authority. He had power. Nobody questioned him. Nobody challenged him. Nurses did what he said. Junior doctors followed his orders. Hospital administrators protected him. But none of that mattered now. The governor of Virginia was standing in front of him and he had nowhere to hide. Governor Williams, I think there's been a misunderstanding, Dr. Pemberton started. His voice wasn't strong anymore. It shook slightly. The only misunderstanding here is that you thought you could provide inadequate care to a patient in crisis without consequences. Governor Williams's voice was ice cold. She turned to David Chang. Mr. Chang, I want this patient's complete medical file. Every test result. Every note. Every decision made since he arrived. I want it all. David Chang nodded quickly. Yes, Governor. Right away. He rushed to the computer and started pulling up Marcus's records. His hand shook as he typed. This was bad. This was very, very bad. The hospital could lose funding. They could lose their accreditation. He could lose his job. Governor Williams turned to her security team. Make sure those cameras keep rolling. I want documentation of everything that happens from this moment forward. The cameramen moved into better positions. They captured the room from different angles. They filmed Marcus on the bed. They filmed Dr. Pemberton's pale face. They filmed Sarah holding her husband's hand. They filmed the monitors showing Marcus's struggling heart. One of the governor's assistants, a young woman named Jennifer, came to her side. Governor, Dr. Yamamoto is on her way. She's the head of cardiology. She'll be here in 3 minutes. Good. Tell her to bring everything she needs for a full cardiac workup. Governor Williams looked at Marcus. She walked closer to his bed. "Mr. Johnson, my name is Patricia Williams. I am the governor of Virginia. Help is coming, real help. You're going to be okay." Her voice was gentle now, comforting. Marcus opened his eyes. He saw the governor standing over him. He thought maybe he was dreaming. Maybe he had died and this was something else. But the pain in his chest told him he was still alive. "Barely. Thank you," Marcus whispered. It was all he could manage. Sarah squeezed his hand. She was crying. But they were tears of relief now. Someone with real power was here. Someone who could make things happen. Someone who wouldn't let her husband die. Governor Williams turned back to Dr. Pemberton. "I want to know exactly what tests you ran. What were the results? What treatment did you provide? And most importantly, why did you refuse to escalate care when your staff expressed concerns?" Dr. Pemberton cleared his throat. The patient's EKG showed some irregularities, but they were consistent with anxiety. His blood pressure was elevated, again consistent with stress. His blood work showed slightly elevated cardiac enzymes, but not at levels that indicated immediate danger. "My clinical judgment was that he needed time to calm down and—" "Your clinical judgment?" Kim Park interrupted. She couldn't help herself. "Your clinical judgment ignored classic signs of myocardial infarction. His pain radiated to his left arm and jaw. His symptoms came on suddenly. His ST segments were elevated. Any first-year medical student would recognize those signs." Dr. Pemberton glared at her. "You're a nurse. You don't get to question a doctor's medical decisions." "Actually, she does." Governor Williams stepped between them. "In this state, under the Healthcare Worker Protection Act that I signed last year, any medical professional has the right and responsibility to report concerns about patient safety. That includes nurses. That includes residents. That includes anyone who works in healthcare." She looked directly into Dr. Pemberton's eyes. "And based on what I'm seeing and hearing, Nurse Park's concerns were absolutely valid." Dr. Chen felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had thought his career was over. He had thought challenging Dr. Pemberton would destroy everything he had worked for. But the governor was backing him up. The governor was supporting the people who tried to do the right thing. Hospital Administrator David Chang was still at the computer, his face getting paler with each record he reviewed. He saw Dr. Reynolds' initial notes. The young doctor had documented serious concerns about Marcus's condition. He had recommended immediate cardiac consultation. But then Dr. Pemberton had taken over the case and dismissed those concerns. Chang saw something else in the records too. Something that made his stomach turn. This wasn't the first time. There were notes from other doctors and nurses expressing concerns about Dr. Pemberton's treatment decisions. There were patient complaints that had been filed and then buried. There were patterns that nobody wanted to see. "Governor, you need to look at this," Chang said quietly. He couldn't hide it anymore. If this came out later, he would be accused of a cover-up. Governor Williams walked over to the computer. She read through the records quickly. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed. "How long has this been going on?" she asked Chang. "I don't know. I'm just seeing this now. I swear I didn't know." Chang was telling the truth. He had heard rumors. He had heard whispers. But he had never looked into it. He had never wanted to look into it. Dr. Pemberton brought in a lot of money to the hospital. He had important connections. It was easier to ignore the problems. Governor Williams turned to her assistant Jennifer. "Call the state medical board. Tell them I need an immediate investigation into Dr. Richard Pemberton's medical license and practice history. Tell them this is a priority." Dr. Pemberton's legs felt weak. He grabbed onto the counter to steady himself. This was really happening. His career was falling apart in front of his eyes. All because of one patient. One black patient who wouldn't just accept his diagnosis and go away quietly. "This is an overreaction," Dr. Pemberton said weakly. "One disagreement about patient care doesn't warrant—" "This isn't one disagreement." Governor Williams held up the computer tablet showing Marcus's records. "This is a pattern of questionable decisions. This is multiple staff members raising concerns. This is a patient in clear distress being told he's faking it for drugs. This is discrimination, doctor, and I won't tolerate it in my state." The word hung in the air. Discrimination. Dr. Pemberton wanted to deny it. He wanted to claim this had nothing to do with race. But everyone in that room knew the truth. They had all seen it. They had all heard it. Sarah spoke up from beside Marcus's bed. He said certain people know how to work the system. He said certain people come to emergency rooms looking for drugs. He looked at my husband when he said it. He meant black people. He meant us. The cameras captured everything. This footage would be on the news by tonight. It would be on social media. It would be everywhere. Dr. Pemberton tried one more time. I never said anything racist. I treated this patient the same way I would treat anyone. That's the problem, Nurse Kim Park said. You didn't treat him the same. I've worked with you for 10 years. I've seen how you treat white patients with chest pain. You take them seriously. You run every test. You call cardiology immediately. But when patients of color come in with the same symptoms, suddenly it's anxiety. Suddenly it's drug seeking. Suddenly they're exaggerating. Dr. Pemberton opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. How could he defend himself when it was true? How could he deny something that everyone had witnessed? The door burst open. A woman in scrubs rushed in carrying a medical bag. She was Asian, probably in her 40s, with kind eyes and an air of competence. This was Dr. Lisa Yamamoto, the head of cardiology. I came as fast as I could. What do we have? Dr. Yamamoto went straight to Marcus's bedside. She didn't waste time with introductions or politics. Governor Williams stepped aside to let her work. Dr. Yamamoto, this patient has been experiencing severe chest pain for approximately 45 minutes. His initial EKG showed irregularities. He has elevated cardiac enzymes. His symptoms include pain radiating to the left arm and jaw. He's been receiving minimal supportive care only. Dr. Yamamoto's eyes widened. 45 minutes? Who's the attending physician? Everyone looked at Dr. Pemberton. Dr. Yamamoto looked at him with disbelief. Richard, please tell me you ordered a troponin test. Please tell me you called me immediately. Dr. Pemberton said nothing. Dr. Yamamoto understood instantly. She had worked with Dr. Pemberton for years. She knew his reputation. She had heard the whispers from other staff. She had suspected for a long time that he provided different levels of care to different patients. But she had never seen it this clearly before. Get out of my way, Dr. Yamamoto said coldly. She pushed past Dr. Pemberton and began examining Marcus. This man is having a STEMI. That's an ST elevation myocardial infarction, a serious heart attack. He needs the cardiac catheterization lab immediately. Dr. Yamamoto started giving rapid orders to the nurses who had gathered at the door. Suddenly, the room exploded with activity. Nurses rushed in with new equipment. Someone wheeled in a crash cart. Someone else was on the phone with the cardiac cath lab, telling them to prepare for an emergency patient. Dr. Yamamoto turned to Governor Williams. Govern. The cardiac catheterization lab was cold and bright. Marcus lay on a special table surrounded by monitors and machines. He was awake but heavily sedated. He could hear voices around him, but everything seemed far away, like he was underwater. Dr. Yamamoto stood beside him, her hands steady and sure. She had done this procedure hundreds of times. She inserted a thin tube called a catheter into an artery in Marcus's wrist. Using special imaging equipment, she guided the catheter through his blood vessels toward his heart. Mr. Johnson, you're doing great. Stay still for me. This won't take long. Dr. Yamamoto's voice was calm and reassuring. On the monitors, she could see inside Marcus's arteries, and there it was. The blockage. A large blood clot had formed in his left anterior descending artery, the main artery that supplied blood to the front of his heart. That's why his chest pain had been so severe. His heart was starving for oxygen. 95% blockage in the LAD, Dr. Yamamoto announced to her team. Preparing to place a stent, she worked quickly. Using tiny tools threaded through the catheter, she placed a small mesh tube called a stent in the blocked artery. The stent would hold the artery open and allow blood to flow again. She inflated a small balloon to expand the stent. Then she checked the monitors to make sure blood was flowing properly. Blood flow restored, heart rhythm stabilizing. One of the nurses monitoring Marcus's vitals called out the good news. Dr. Yamamoto let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. They had made it in time. A few more minutes and the damage to Marcus's heart could have been permanent. A few more hours and he could have died. She thought about Dr. Pemberton. She thought about how close this patient had come to being sent home to die. It made her angry. It made her sick. She had taken an oath to do no harm. How could a fellow doctor have violated that oath so completely? Mr. Johnson, we're all done. You had a blockage in your heart artery. We opened it up and placed a stent. You're going to be okay. Dr. Yamamoto patted his shoulder gently. Marcus tried to speak, but his mouth was dry. The nurse gave him some ice chips. "Thank you," Marcus managed to whisper. "You saved my life. You saved your own life by not giving up. And your wife saved you by fighting for you." Dr. Yamamoto smiled. "Rest now. We're taking you to the cardiac ICU where we'll monitor you closely." While Marcus was in surgery, Governor Williams had taken over a conference room on the hospital's administrative floor. She sat at the head of a long table. Nurse Kim Park and Dr. James Chen sat on one side. Her assistants and legal team sat on the other. David Chang, the hospital administrator, sat looking miserable at the far end. The governor had her tablet open, reviewing Marcus Johnson's complete medical file. The more she read, the angrier she became. "Walk me through exactly what happened from the moment Mr. Johnson arrived," Governor Williams said. Dr. Chen spoke first. "The paramedics brought him in around 2:15 p.m. I was the first physician to see him. His symptoms were classic for a cardiac event: crushing chest pain, pain radiating to his left arm and jaw, shortness of breath, diaphoresis, that means excessive sweating." "I know what diaphoresis means. Doctor, continue." The governor took notes on her tablet. "I ordered an EKG and blood work immediately. The EKG showed ST segment elevation in several leads. That's a clear sign of a heart attack in progress. His troponin levels were elevated. Troponin is a protein that's released when heart muscle is damaged. Every single indicator pointed to acute myocardial infarction." Dr. Chen pulled up images on his phone. "I took photos of his test results before Dr. Pemberton could alter anything. Here you can see the ST elevation clearly marked." Governor Williams examined the images carefully. Even though she wasn't a doctor, she had reviewed enough medical cases during her time as a civil rights attorney to recognize what she was seeing. These were not normal results. These were emergency results, so what happened next? She asked. "I told Mr. Johnson that we needed to consult with cardiology immediately. But then Dr. Pemberton arrived. He's the senior attending physician on duty. By hospital protocol, he takes over all serious cases." Dr. Chen's voice became bitter. "I briefed him on the patient's condition and showed him the test results. He looked at them for maybe 10 seconds and said it was probably just anxiety. Did he offer any medical reasoning for that assessment? No. He just said patients come to the ER all the time thinking they're having heart attacks when they're not. He said Mr. Johnson needed to calm down and rest." Dr. Chen looked down at his hands. "I tried to argue. I pointed out the ST elevation. He told me I was reading the EKG wrong. He told me I was too inexperienced to understand what I was seeing." Kim Park spoke up. "That's when I first noticed something was wrong. I've worked in this ER for 10 years. I've seen Dr. Pemberton treat chest pain patients before. White patients with these exact same symptoms get rushed to the cath lab immediately, but Mr. Johnson barely got basic supportive care." "Tell me about the drug-seeking comment," Governor Williams said. Kim's face hardened. "Dr. Pemberton said that certain people know how to work the system. He said they come to emergency rooms claiming to have emergencies so they can get pain medication. He was looking directly at Mr. Johnson when he said it. The implication was clear. Did he ever use explicitly racial language? No, he's too smart for that. He's been doing this long enough to know how to hide it, but everyone in that room knew exactly what he meant." Kim pulled out her own phone. "I took photos and videos of everything. The monitors, the test results, the timestamps. I documented Dr. Pemberton's refusal to escalate care. I have proof of everything." Governor Williams looked at the nurse with respect. "You risked your job to do that. I risked my job to do the right thing. I became a nurse to help people, not to watch them die because of one doctor's prejudice." Kim's voice was strong and clear. The governor turned to David Chang. "Mr. Chang, were you aware of any concerns about Dr. Pemberton's treatment of minority patients?" Chang squirmed in his seat. There had been some complaints over the years, but complaints are common in healthcare. Patients don't always understand medical decisions. Families get emotional. We reviewed each complaint and found no clear evidence of discrimination. Did you investigate thoroughly? Did you look for patterns? We conducted standard reviews. Chang knew how weak that sounded. Governor Williams pulled up something on her tablet. "I had my team pull public records of all complaints filed against this hospital in the last 5 years. Riverside Medical Center has received 47 formal complaints alleging discrimination. 47. That's more than 3 times the state average for hospitals of this size." Chang's face went pale. I wasn't aware the number was that high. How could you not be aware? You're the administrator. The governor's voice was sharp. Let me tell you what I think happened. I think complaints came in. I think staff members raised concerns. And I think those concerns were buried because Dr. Pemberton is a senior physician who brings in revenue and has powerful friends. The silence in the room confirmed everything. Governor Williams stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the parking lot, the city beyond, the lives of thousands of people who trusted hospitals to care for them equally and fairly. I'm going to ask you something, Mr. Chang, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. If Mr. Johnson had been white, if he had been a wealthy businessman or a politician or a celebrity, would Dr. Pemberton have sent him home? Chang opened his mouth, then closed it. He knew the answer. Everyone in the room knew the answer. No, Chang finally admitted. No, he wouldn't have. Governor Williams turned back to face him. That's what we call systemic discrimination. It's not always loud or obvious. It's often quiet and subtle. It's in the assumptions doctors make. It's in the way they interpret symptoms. It's in who they believe and who they dismiss. And it kills people. She sat back down at the table. Here's what's going to happen. I'm ordering a full investigation of this hospital by the State Health Department. Every patient file will be reviewed. Every complaint will be reopened. Every staff member will be interviewed. And if we find evidence of systemic discrimination, this hospital will face serious consequences. Chang nodded miserably. His career was probably over. But he couldn't argue. He had failed. He had known something was wrong and he had looked the other way. As for Dr. Pemberton, the governor continued, I'm recommending that his medical license be suspended immediately pending a full review by the state medical board. He will not treat another patient until we're satisfied that he can provide equitable care to everyone. Jennifer, the governor's assistant, knocked on the door. Governor, Mr. Johnson is out of surgery. Dr. Yamamoto says it was successful. He's going to make a full recovery. Governor Williams stood and walked into the hallway. She put her arm around Sarah's shoulders. Your husband is a fighter, Mrs. Johnson, and you're a fighter too. You refused to accept inadequate care. You made noise. You demanded help. You saved his life as much as any doctor did. I was so scared, Sarah sobbed. I thought I was going to lose him. I thought they were going to let him die. But they didn't. He's alive. And because of what? Sarah pushed open the door to the cardiac ICU room. The space was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. Marcus lay in the bed, his eyes half open. He looked tired and pale, but he was alive. He was breathing. His heart was beating. Marcus, Sarah whispered. She rushed to his side and took his hand carefully, mindful of all the tubes and wires connected to him. Marcus turned his head slowly and saw his wife. He tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. Hey, baby. Hey, yourself. Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. You scared me half to death. Sorry about that. Wasn't exactly in my plans for today. Marcus's voice was weak, but he was trying to joke. That was a good sign. That meant he was still Marcus. The doctor said you're going to be fine. They put a stent in your artery. You'll need to take some medications and make some lifestyle changes, but you're going to be okay. Sarah stroked his hair gently. I know. Dr. Yamamoto explained everything. She's amazing. Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand. But I remember what happened before. With that other doctor, Dr. Pemberton. Sarah's expression darkened. Don't think about him right now. Just focus on getting better. He was going to let me die, wasn't he? Marcus looked into his wife's eyes. He needed to hear the truth. Sarah hesitated. Then she nodded. Yes, if Governor Williams hadn't shown up when she did, you would have been sent home. And then, she couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Marcus closed his eyes. He felt a mix of emotions, anger, fear, sadness, relief. He had spent his whole life trying to be a good person. He taught kids to be kind, to work hard, to treat everyone with respect. And yet a doctor had looked at him and decided his life wasn't worth saving because of the color of his skin. What happens now? Marcus asked. Governor Williams is handling it. She's investigating the hospital. Dr. Pemberton has been suspended. There's going to be changes, big changes. Sarah explained everything she knew. Marcus absorbed this information slowly. He was exhausted and the pain medication made it hard to focus. But he understood the basics. He was going to live, and maybe his near-death experience would help other people avoid the same fate. "The nurse and that young doctor," Marcus said. "The ones who stood up for me. Are they okay?" "They're fine." The governor called them heroes. "They're going to be at a press conference tonight." Sarah smiled. "They risked everything to help you." "I'll never forget that," Marcus nodded. He would need to thank them properly when he was stronger. They had shown real courage. They had proven that there were still good people in the world who would do the right thing even when it was hard. A nurse came in to check Marcus's vitals. It wasn't Kim Park, but word had spread through the hospital about what happened. The nurse was extra gentle and attentive. "Mr. Johnson, you're doing great. Your heart rhythm is stable. Your blood pressure is coming down. Just rest and let your body heal." The nurse smiled warmly at him. After she left, Sarah sat in the chair next to Marcus's bed. She didn't let go of his hand. She wasn't planning to let go for a very long time. Meanwhile, 3 floors down in a small office, Dr. Richard Pemberton sat alone. One of the governor's security guards stood outside the door. He wasn't technically under arrest, but he wasn't free to leave either. He stared at the wall, his mind racing. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? This morning he had been a respected physician. Now he was suspended and facing an investigation that could end his career. He thought about Marcus Johnson. He tried to convince himself that his medical judgment had been sound. The patient's symptoms could have been anxiety. People did fake emergencies for drugs. He hadn't done anything wrong, but deep down in a place he didn't want to look, he knew the truth. He had seen those test results. He had seen the ST elevation on the EKG. He had known Marcus Johnson needed immediate cardiac care, but he had looked at the patient's black face and made assumptions. He had decided this patient was probably exaggerating, probably seeking drugs, probably not really in crisis. When had he become this person? He tried to trace it back. Had it been a gradual thing? Had years of biases and stereotypes slowly poisoned his judgment? Or had it always been there lurking beneath the surface of his professionalism? His phone buzzed. It was his lawyer. Word was already spreading. The video footage from the governor's cameras was being shared on social media. His name was trending on Twitter. People were calling him a racist doctor, a murderer, a disgrace to the medical profession. Dr. Pemberton put his phone down without answering. There was nothing his lawyer could say that would make this better. At 6 o'clock that evening, Governor Patricia Williams stood at a podium in the hospital's main conference room. Behind her stood Nurse Kim Park and Dr. James Chen. To the side, dozens of reporters crowded with cameras and microphones. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," the governor began. Her voice was strong and clear. "I want to tell you about something that happened at this hospital today. Something that should never happen anywhere in the United States of America." She described Marcus Johnson's arrival at the emergency room. She described his symptoms and test results. She described Dr. Pemberton's refusal to provide adequate care. She described how close Marcus came to being sent home to die. The reporters scribbled notes furiously. Cameras flashed. This was a huge story. "Marcus Johnson is alive today for 2 reasons," Governor Williams continued. "First, because his wife Sarah refused to accept inadequate care. She fought for her husband. She made noise. She demanded help. Second, because 2 healthcare workers had the courage to speak up when they saw something wrong." She gestured to Kim and Dr. Chen. Nurse Kim Park and Dr. James Chen risked their careers today to save a patient's life. They challenged a senior physician's authority. They documented everything. They told the truth even when it was dangerous to do so. They are heroes. Kim stepped up to the microphone, her hands shaking slightly. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel like I did what any nurse should do. But I also know that it's hard to speak up. There's a power structure in hospitals. Senior doctors have a lot of authority. Junior staff members can face retaliation for questioning their decisions." She took a deep breath. "But we can't let fear stop us from protecting patients. If we see something wrong, we have to say something, even if it costs us our jobs. Because lives are at stake." Dr. Chen spoke next. "I'm a resident. I'm still learning. But I learned in medical school that patient care comes first. Always. When I saw Mr. Johnson's test results, I knew he needed immediate intervention. When Dr. Pemberton refused, I had to speak up. I couldn't stay silent and watch a man die." He looked directly into the cameras. "I want to encourage other young doctors out there. If you see inadequate care, report it. If you see discrimination, call it out. Don't let anyone tell you that you're too inexperienced to know what's right and wrong. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and most importantly, trust that your patients' lives matter more than hospital politics. Governor Williams took back the microphone. Based on what happened today, I'm taking several actions. First, I'm ordering an immediate investigation of Riverside Medical Center by the State Health Department. Every patient complaint will be reviewed. Every case of possible discrimination will be examined. She paused for effect. Second, I'm recommending that the State Medical Board suspend Dr. Richard Pemberton's license pending a full review of his practice history. If evidence of discriminatory treatment is found, that suspension will become permanent. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd of reporters. Third, I will be introducing legislation in the next session that requires all Virginia hospitals to track and report patient outcomes by race and ethnicity. We need data. We need transparency. We need to identify where disparities exist so we can fix them. A reporter raised her hand. Governor, do you believe Dr. Pemberton's actions were racially motivated? Governor Williams chose her words carefully. I believe Dr. Pemberton made assumptions about his patient based on that patient's race. I believe those assumptions led him to provide a lower standard of care. Whether he did this consciously or unconsciously doesn't change the outcome. Marcus Johnson nearly died because of it. Another reporter called out. What message does this send to other doctors in Virginia? The message is simple. Provide equal care to all patients. Period. It doesn't matter their race, their income, their insurance status, or their background. Every patient deserves the best care you can provide. And if you can't do that, find another profession. The press conference continued for another 30 minutes. Reporters asked about hospital policies, medical board procedures, and the governor's legislative plans. Governor Williams answered each question thoroughly and honestly. When it was over, Kim and Dr. Chen were surrounded by reporters wanting individual interviews. They had become the faces of healthcare workers who refused to stay silent about injustice. Riverside Medical Center apologizes to Marcus Johnson and his family for the inadequate care he received. We take full responsibility for what happened. We are cooperating completely with the state investigation. We will implement whatever changes are necessary to ensure this never happens again. A reporter asked about Dr. Pemberton. What did you know about complaints against him? 3 weeks had passed since the incident at Riverside Medical Center. Marcus was home now, recovering steadily. He took his medications every morning. He went to cardiac rehabilitation 3 times a week. He had changed his diet and started taking gentle walks around the neighborhood. His doctor said he was healing well, but the world around him had changed in ways he never expected. The story had grown beyond one hospital, beyond one doctor. It had become a national conversation about healthcare discrimination. Marcus's phone rang constantly with interview requests. News networks wanted him on their shows. Advocacy groups wanted him to speak at their events. Lawyers wanted to discuss lawsuits. He turned down most of them. He wasn't ready to be a public figure. He just wanted to be a high school history teacher who had survived a heart attack. Sarah, however, had embraced a new role. She had become an advocate for patients' rights. She spoke at community meetings. She shared their story with anyone who would listen. She had found purpose in making sure what happened to Marcus didn't happen to others. On this particular morning, Marcus sat at his kitchen table reading the newspaper. The headline caught his attention. State Medical Board revokes Dr. Pemberton's license. Marcus read the article carefully. The medical board had completed its investigation. They had reviewed Dr. Pemberton's entire career going back 35 years. They had examined patient files, interviewed staff members, and analyzed treatment patterns. The findings were damning. Dr. Pemberton had a clear pattern of providing different levels of care based on patients' race. Black and Hispanic patients with chest pain waited an average of 42 minutes longer to see a cardiologist than white patients with identical symptoms. Minority patients were prescribed pain medication at significantly lower rates. They were less likely to receive advanced diagnostic tests even when symptoms warranted them. The board had found 16 cases similar to Marcus's situation. 16 times over the years when Dr. Pemberton had dismissed serious symptoms in minority patients. Most of those patients had survived, but 3 had died after being sent home from the emergency room. 3 families had lost loved ones who might still be alive if they had received proper care. The medical board statement was unequivocal. Dr. Richard Pemberton violated his oath to do no harm. He allowed personal biases to compromise patient care. His medical license is permanently revoked. He will never practice medicine again in the state of Virginia. Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions as he read. There was satisfaction in seeing justice done, but there was also sadness for the patients who hadn't been as lucky as him. And there was anger that it had taken so long for anyone to notice the pattern. Sarah came downstairs already dressed for the day. She had a meeting with Governor Williams's healthcare task force. The governor had appointed her to a committee designing new policies to address discrimination in medical care. "Did you see the news about Dr. Pemberton?" Marcus held up the newspaper. Sarah nodded. "I got an alert on my phone." "It's about time." "But Marcus, they found 3 deaths. 3 people died because of him." "I know." Marcus's voice was quiet. "I keep thinking about their families. They didn't get their miracle. The governor didn't walk through the door for them." Sarah sat down next to her husband. "That's why we have to keep pushing for change. So families in the future won't need a miracle. They'll just get the care they deserve." She kissed him on the forehead and grabbed her keys. "I'll be back this afternoon. Don't overdo it today. Just rest and heal." After she left, Marcus sat alone with his thoughts. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Kim Park, the nurse who had documented everything that day. "Did you see the news? Justice for you and for all his other victims. Thank you for not giving up." Marcus smiled and texted back, "Thank you for speaking up. You saved my life." Kim had become a local hero. She had been promoted to a supervisory position in the emergency department. The hospital had created a new patient advocacy role specifically for her. Her job now was to review cases where staff members raised concerns about inadequate care. She had the authority to override attending physicians if she believed patient safety was at risk. Dr. James Chen had also seen his career take an unexpected turn. Instead of being punished for challenging Dr. Pemberton, he had been celebrated. Medical schools across the country were using his story as a teaching example. He spoke to students about the importance of speaking up when they witnessed injustice. Several hospitals had offered him positions after his residency ended, specifically because of the courage he had shown. At Riverside Medical Center itself, massive changes were underway. David Chang had resigned as administrator. The hospital board had hired a new leadership team committed to addressing systemic discrimination. Every staff member had to complete comprehensive bias training. New protocols required second opinions in cases where emergency room physicians wanted to discharge patients with potentially serious symptoms. The hospital had also reached out to the families of the 3 patients who died after being treated by Dr. Pemberton. They offered sincere apologies and financial settlements. Money couldn't bring back lost loved ones, but it was an acknowledgement of the hospital's failure to protect patients. Governor Williams had been true to her word. She had introduced sweeping healthcare legislation. The bill required all Virginia hospitals to collect and publicly report data on patient outcomes by race and ethnicity. It created penalties for facilities that showed persistent disparities. It established protections for healthcare workers who reported discrimination or inadequate care. The legislation faced opposition from hospital associations who claimed it was too burdensome and expensive. But public opinion was overwhelmingly in favor. The story of Marcus Johnson had touched something deep in people. They understood that healthcare discrimination wasn't just about statistics and policies. It was about real people dying when they should have lived. That afternoon, Marcus decided to take a walk. His doctor had encouraged gentle exercise. He put on his jacket and headed out into the October sunshine. The leaves were changing colors, gold and red and orange against the blue sky. As he walked through his neighborhood, people waved to him. Some stopped to ask how he was feeling. A few thanked him for speaking out. One older black woman grabbed his hand and told him her own story about being dismissed by doctors. She had tears in her eyes. "For years I thought it was just me," she said. "I thought maybe I was imagining things. But your story made me realize I wasn't alone. So many of us have experienced this." Marcus squeezed her hand. "You're not alone. We're going to make things better." He hoped that was true. He wanted to believe that his near-death experience would lead to lasting change. But he also knew how resistant systems could be to change. How easy it was for people to forget and slip back into old patterns. When Marcus got home, he found an envelope in his mailbox. It was from the Virginia Medical Society. He opened it curiously. Inside was a letter inviting him to speak at their annual conference. They wanted him to share his story with doctors from across the state. They wanted healthcare providers to hear directly from a patient who had been harmed by discrimination. Marcus stared at the letter for a long time. Did he want to stand in front of hundreds of doctors and relive the worst day of his life? Did he want to face people who might be defensive or dismissive? But then he thought about Nurse Kim and Dr. Chen. They had risked everything to do the right thing. The least he could do was use his voice to help educate others. He called Sarah. "I got invited to speak at a medical conference. I think I should do it. Are you sure you're ready?" Sarah's voice was concerned but supportive. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but I need to do it anyway." Marcus felt a sense of purpose settling over him. Over the next few weeks, Marcus prepared his speech. He worked with Sarah to craft a message that was honest but not accusatory. He wanted doctors to understand what he had experienced without making them feel attacked. Change wouldn't come from shame and guilt. It would come from education and empathy. The day of the medical conference arrived. Marcus stood backstage in a large hotel ballroom, his heart pounding. He wondered if his heart could handle the stress. But his cardiologist had cleared him for this. Dr. Yamamoto had even offered to be in the audience in case he needed anything. Governor Williams was the opening speaker. She stood at the podium addressing hundreds of healthcare providers. "Medicine is both an art and a science," she began. "The science part is relatively straightforward. We have tests, data, and evidence-based protocols. But the art of medicine involves something more complex, seeing patients as full human beings worthy of our best care and attention." She paused, letting her words sink in. Unfortunately, implicit biases can interfere with that art. We make assumptions based on a patient's appearance, accent, or background. We let those assumptions color our medical judgment, and sometimes those assumptions kill people. Today you're going to hear from Marcus Johnson, a patient who nearly died because a physician made assumptions about him based on his race. I want you to listen with open hearts and minds. I want you to think about your own practice, and I want you to commit to doing better. 6 months had passed since Marcus Johnson's heart attack. Spring had arrived in Richmond, bringing warm sunshine and blooming flowers. But more importantly, it brought real change to Virginia's healthcare system. Marcus stood in the state capitol building watching as Governor Williams prepared to sign a historic piece of legislation. The Healthcare Equity and Accountability Act had passed both chambers of the legislature with overwhelming support. The public pressure following Marcus's story had made it politically impossible for lawmakers to vote against it. Sarah stood beside him, proudly holding his hand. They had both become advocates for healthcare reform, traveling across Virginia to share their story and push for change. It was exhausting work on top of Marcus's teaching job, but it felt important. It felt necessary. Governor Williams looked out at the crowd gathered for the signing ceremony. She saw Marcus and Sarah. She saw Nurse Kim Park and Dr. James Chen, who had both become leaders in the patient safety movement. She saw Dr. Lisa Yamamoto, who had led the effort to reform policies at Riverside Medical Center. She saw families who had lost loved ones to discriminatory healthcare practices. 6 months ago, a man nearly died in an emergency room because a doctor didn't believe his symptoms were real. Governor Williams began. That man is here today alive and well, because people refuse to stay silent about injustice. Because a nurse documented everything even though she could have been fired. Because a young doctor spoke up even though he could have lost his career. Because a wife fought for her husband even when security tried to remove her. The governor's voice grew stronger. But Marcus Johnson's story is not unique. It's just one story that happened to have witnesses and cameras. Countless other patients have suffered and died in silence. That ends today. She picked up her pen. This legislation requires hospitals to track patient outcomes by race, ethnicity, gender, and socioeconomic status. It requires transparency. It creates accountability. It protects healthcare workers who report discrimination. And it ensures that patients who experience inadequate care have real recourse. Governor Williams signed the bill with flourish. The audience erupted in applause. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks. This law wouldn't bring back the people who had died, but it might save future lives. It might prevent other families from experiencing the terror that Sarah had felt that day. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded Marcus. He had gotten better at handling media attention over the past 6 months, though he still felt uncomfortable with it. "Mr. Johnson, how does it feel to see this legislation signed into law?" a reporter asked. "It feels like something good came from something terrible," Marcus answered honestly. "I wish this law wasn't necessary. I wish I could trust that all doctors treat all patients equally. But until we reach that point, we need systems in place to monitor and enforce equity in healthcare." Another reporter called out, "What would you say to Dr. Pemberton if you could speak to him today?" Marcus paused. He had thought about this question many times. He had felt anger toward Dr. Pemberton. He had felt betrayed, but he had also done a lot of thinking about how people become who they are, how biases develop and become ingrained. I would tell him that he had the power to save lives, and instead he let his prejudices get in the way. I would tell him that his actions had consequences, not just for me but for many patients over many years. And I would tell him that it's never too late to examine yourself and do better. Marcus took a breath. But honestly, this was never just about one doctor. This is about a system that allowed him to practice for decades while showing clear patterns of discrimination. This is about hospitals that buried complaints. This is about a culture that made it risky for nurses and junior doctors to speak up. We need to change the entire system, not just punish one person. The reporters seemed satisfied with this answer. They moved on to interview other people involved in the legislation. Kim Park spoke about the new protections for healthcare workers. Before this law, reporting a doctor for inadequate care could end your career. Now there are legal protections. You can't be fired or retaliated against for raising patient safety concerns. This will save lives because more people will feel safe speaking up. Dr. Chen talked about the impact on medical education. Medical schools across Virginia are now required to teach about implicit bias and its effects on patient care. Future doctors will be better prepared to examine their own assumptions and provide equitable care. Dr. Yamamoto discussed hospital-level changes. Riverside Medical Center has become a model for addressing discrimination in healthcare. We implemented over 40 policy changes. We created new oversight systems. We empowered nurses and junior doctors to challenge decisions they disagree with. And our patient satisfaction scores have actually improved because people feel more heard and respected. As the press conference wound down, Marcus found a quiet corner to rest. His heart was doing well, but he still tired more easily than before his heart attack. Sarah brought him a bottle of water and sat beside him. "You did good today," she said softly. "We did good," Marcus corrected. "None of this would have happened without you fighting for me that day." Sarah smiled. "We make a good team." They watched as Governor Williams spoke with families who had lost loved ones to healthcare discrimination. The governor spent time with each family, listening to their stories, offering condolences and commitment to change. She was genuine in her concern. This wasn't just political for her, it was personal. Later that week, Marcus returned to his high school classroom. His students had followed his story in the news. They had seen him on TV. They had read articles about him. At first, Marcus worried that his newfound public profile would make teaching difficult. But his students surprised him. "Mr. Johnson, you're like a real-life hero," one student said. Marcus laughed. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who survived something scary and tried to make something positive come from it." "But you're changing the whole healthcare system," another student insisted. "Not by myself. It takes a lot of people working together to create change. Nurse Kim, Dr. Chen, Governor Williams, my wife Sarah, all the advocates and activists who have been fighting this fight for years. I'm just one part of a much bigger movement." Marcus used his experience as a teaching opportunity. He talked to his students about systemic racism, about implicit bias, about the importance of speaking up when they witnessed injustice. He showed them that history wasn't just something that happened in the past. It was being made every day by ordinary people who refused to accept the status quo. One of his students, a young black girl named Keisha, approached him after class. "Mr. Johnson, my mom says she's been treated badly by doctors before. She says they don't take her pain seriously. Is that because of racism too?" Marcus knelt down to be at eye level with Keisha. "Probably yes. Studies show that black women especially face discrimination in healthcare. Their pain is often dismissed. Their concerns are often ignored. It's a serious problem." Keisha looked worried. "What can she do about it?" "She can speak up. She can ask questions. She can request second opinions. She can bring an advocate with her to appointments." Marcus thought for a moment. "And she can know her rights." The new law gives patients more power to report inadequate care. Things are getting better slowly but surely. Keisha nodded, seeming reassured. I'm glad you didn't die, Mr. Johnson. Me too, Keisha. Me too. That evening, Marcus received a phone call from an unexpected source. It was Dr. Reynolds, the young emergency room doctor who had first treated him before Dr. Pemberton took over the case. Mr. Johnson, I don't know if you remember me. I was the first doctor who saw you that day. I wanted to apologize for not fighting harder. I knew you needed cardiac care, but when Dr. Pemberton took over and dismissed my concerns, I backed down. I should have pushed harder. Marcus remembered him. Dr. Reynolds, you did nothing wrong. You were a resident following hospital hierarchy. The system was stacked against you, but I could have done more. I could have called cardiology myself. I could have gone over his head. I let institutional power dynamics stop me from advocating for you. Dr. Reynolds' voice was heavy with guilt. What matters is what you do going forward, Marcus said gently. Learn from what happened. Be the kind of doctor who speaks up next time. Be the kind of doctor who doesn't let hierarchy get in the way of patient care. I will. I promise you I will. Dr. Reynolds paused. I actually wanted to tell you something else. I'm starting a fellowship in emergency medicine with a focus on healthcare equity. I want to study how emergency departments can better serve minority patients. I want to train other doctors to recognize and counteract their biases. Marcus felt a surge of hope. That's wonderful. That's exactly the kind of work we need. You inspired me. Your story made me realize that medicine is about more than just diagnosing and treating. It's about seeing every patient's humanity. It's about providing equal care regardless of who walks through your door. After the call ended, Marcus sat on his couch reflecting. The ripples from that terrible day kept spreading. Dr. Reynolds was changing his career path. Medical schools were changing their curricula. Hospitals were changing their policies. Patients were finding their voices and demanding better treatment.